Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of the Vitality Coaches Wellbeing Programme. My name is Jamie and my role is Head of Health Engagement, and as you can see we are filming from a special location again today. We are with our partners at Pure Gym. Now our theme for September is all about maximising potential, and I couldn't think of any better guests to be working with today. We are so proud to have Tracey Neville, who's one of our Vitality ambassadors, and Sir Chris Hoy, who is a Pure Gym ambassador, to talk us through this topic and all of their experiences along the way. So I hope you enjoy it. Please stay tuned. Tracey, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. It is a real pleasure. So today our theme is all about maximising potential, and as I said in the introduction, that is why we think that you two are the perfect guests for that. But we're kind of going to go way back to the start about the kind of beginnings of your career and the fundamentals that you believe have been most influential in what you've achieved. At Vitality, obviously, we're interested in positive behaviour change. Now, I'm going to ask you this question later on about whether you think you've achieved your potential. But in terms of the way that you have been through your careers and the processes that you've gone through to achieve what you have, are there certain behaviours that you've been able to highlight that have been fundamental in achieving your success? So you're looking at each other as if I'm going to point this question at someone.
Up to you, Tracey. Ladies first.
I'm going to say, Chris, that I was almost on time.
Well, yeah, you were early, to be fair. I was on time.
On time,
you were early.
He's late.
I'm a big one, well, you know, I'm a big one for punctuality, so yeah.
Should we start with you then,
okay,
Chris?
well,
Because Tracy's not doing it, hasn't she?
Well, do you know, thinking back to the start, when I joined my first cycling club when I was about 14 or 15, so I did BMX in my younger years, started cycling, mountain biking, track cycling. And my first coach, you know, just a volunteer, guy who ran the club, him and his wife and his son ran the club. And he was the first person that really made me think about goal setting and about having a dream is great, but if you really want to achieve it, you've got to make it into a tangible goal, and breaking it down from this big scary goal into small stepping stones that you can that aren't quite as as scary. So it's just one step at a time. Don't think about the end goal, focus on the next step and have a plan. And it sounds really simple, and it is really simple, but that was the first time I really thought about it. And ever since then, that's what I've done in everything I do. I have an end goal, and that's your kind of carrot that you're drawn towards. That's your motivation. But really, you break it down into smaller, manageable chunks, and every day you have a plan of what you're going to do.
I think that's something that we always try to encourage our people to think about as well, is that actually there's not maybe that much control that you can have over that end goal. It's about those daily behaviours. So Tracey, I think you and Chris maybe have some similarities in terms of your coaching in particular. Chris, obviously you worked in Olympic cycles, so you've probably got 4 years of wait potentially for that main goal. And Tracey, when you're thinking about coaching and tournaments and seasons and things like that, are there key behaviours though that you have to instill in your players really early on in order to achieve those bigger goals?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot more when I was a head coach than I did as a player, because I think when you're in a team scenario, you sort of go with, when you look back, it was a process that we actually went through, but you sort of follow your teammates, and if they do it, you do it, and so on and so on. So it was a little bit like that. When I was head coach, I think one of the huge ceiling breakers for England netball was about winning this gold medal that they'd never actually done. They wanted to smash history, break the glass ceiling, and so on. And I think with my history with England netball, there was a lot of things that I learned along the times. You know, we were constantly making changes, not productive changes. We weren't trying to strive to be what the best in the world were, which they were predominantly professional. We didn't have a home of netball. We didn't have an environment where we could, pull out people out on their behaviours. So I think that's one of the things that I really learned when I got into that head coach role, about how we can make change, how we can make a better future for netball. So one of the first things that we did is we got a home for netball. So we started to mark it up. We had a changing room. We had role models on the wall that had progressed to be the best in the world. We had an environment. We had a full-time staff. We had links to the best training facilities all over the country. We started to bring in Super League. So there was a staged approach to how we were trying to bridge that gap between amateur and professional. And it was a massive gap, and we're still trying to, break that glass ceiling, as we say. But it was the markers that set us on to that gold medal.
I think it's so interesting that you both speak about an understanding of what the long term looks like. And I'm just trying to bring this back to our audience, because I think you probably both had very clear and obvious goals that you were working towards. So again, with our theme being maximising potential, we look at the pre-registered questions before we get to these events. And some people have said things like, I don't feel like I'm giving my all. I feel like I'm trapped a little bit. Like, I feel like there's more that I can offer the world.
Do you know what? I watched Chris. I used to call it crash mat cycling. They used to be in the side of the gym. We used to be like doing these like little speed agility drills. It used to be on this, next minute he'd just go bump onto this crash mat. And I was like, why would you do that?
Happy days. Yeah, basically you get to the point where your body has completely seized up and you can't physically get off the bike, so you get helped off the bike. You lie on this crash mat for like 15 minutes in the fetal position, try not to be sick. And so that wasn't every day. That was a special session, and really high intensity intervals, building up lactate, anaerobic efforts. And it's basically the body is becoming, or it's adapting to get used to this high level of acidity in the muscles and in the blood from the training. And it is brutal. It's very extreme. But in doing that, and you know, it was a big part of it was the physical side, but also the mental side, being able to push yourself that hard, and also knowing that on race day, you've done everything within your powers to be the best you could be. So you could accept the result. You know, you can't say, you know, you talk about goals and end results. You can never say we're going to win this match or we're going to win this gold medal or this tournament. What you can say is we're going to be in the best shape of our lives, and it's going to take a big performance to beat us. So that gives you confidence. If you fixate on the end goal, you've got to have a goal, you've got to have a target. But for me, it was focusing on the process of what I was doing. If you absolutely commit to the process and you don't worry about the outcome will happen, and you might win, you might not win. But if you enjoy the process, I didn't enjoy the pain, but I enjoyed it.
I think what was really pleasing about that is there used to be a group of them that used to do this, but they didn't do it on their own, so obviously one got on the bike, did it. They saw the result of that by this person being like falling off, but then the next one just got on the bike, and I was like, you know, like normally like you see that and you go, oh, I'm just taxis here, but
we
they
were
didn't.
stupid cyclists though. All we did is ride in circles all day, so you know, we're not smart. You know.
And I was brought up watching, you know, there was squash there was other events there. I was an individual athlete from a team sport training on my own in Manchester, and I think what was really positive about that environment I was in is that how they pushed each other to be better. You know, they used to cycle round us when we were in the middle, but I was never with any of my other teammates. And I think when I become head coach, I thought, you know, if I see someone that's world class like Chris, you know, what is he doing for the people that are under him? You know, he's setting the standard of everybody else in his team, and I think that's really pleasing to see. So when I was head coach, I wanted the best athlete in an environment, and I wanted other athletes training with them. And I think you can only achieve that when when we formed the centralised programme, when there's a period in the year where you can train with the best athletes in the world and really push them standards and them behaviours.
And it becomes normal, doesn't it? Because if you have a certain level of excellence and new athletes come into that program and they see, well, this is what is expected of me and everybody else, it's not an exceptional thing to do those kind of sessions. That was the norm. We didn't really think it was that big a deal. But it's when you put it in context of normal activity, normal exercise, you realise that is actually quite far down the spectrum towards the end of absolutely pushing your body as hard as it can go. But then as a young athlete coming into that, you go, well, this is the norm. If I want to be the best, that's who I want to be like, that's what I've got to do too. And I first saw it when I saw Graham O'Brien training up in Scotland back in, I don't know, mid-1990s, and I thought I was training hard until I saw him, and that opened my eyes to how hard you could flog yourself. So
I think that's something that I've always admired about athletes and sport in general. It's way more than the physical. And again, when we're trying to think about how we can help people explore what their potential is, do you think that sport, I think you've given two really interesting examples there. Chris, probably one about exploring your physical potential because you've got full control over that. But Tracey, to your point, you kind of mentioned about how other people can really help you achieve your full potential. So if I start on that one, how important is environment? How do you know what is right for you? Because Chris, I think I might come to you on that as well, about like seeing other people. What do other people?
I think it's an introduction to an environment. Like if you'd have taught one of probably the young cyclists watching Chris do that, you know, that is quite a scary thing to watch on a regular basis. So if I look at when we bring these girls into the environment, it's not probably giving them too much at once. So there is a staged approach to performance and world class. You know, I think there's a level where you need to be enjoying it, but there's that enjoyment becomes a little bit less as the training starts and intensity starts to increase because the outcome is so minute. So when we were coaching, you know, we introduced young girls into our environment, you know, younger players, younger athletes, you know, because if we'd have just took them full blown in, they probably would have broke, they probably would have got demoralised. They weren't at the standard or skill level of all the other athletes. So it's about a staged approach to how you do that. And I think we need to be better at that within netball. I think we need to put more probably performance centres on, give people more access to training. But we are getting better. If I think where I started when I was younger, that training was just going out playing netball at night. It wasn't going to a gym, it wasn't having a trainer, it wasn't having an itinerary or anything like that, or a focus or a big goal in mind. It was literally just go out and play and win that game.
And Chris, for you, from a perspective around other people and how they can support you with your training, I've got a couple of questions here, because we were talking a little bit before on camera about you pushing yourself to that limit. So a few questions. Yeah, good question.
This morning I did so every now and again I'll do a session, similar type of session. It won't be quite the same level, obviously, because I'm not a professional athlete anymore, but I enjoy just having a little dig every now and again, just seeing how it feels. Like, my wife will come in to the gym. The gym, it's just my garage. So I don't often do it, at a pure gym, because it's not something I really want to do in public. So I've got like a static bike at home.
People there to pick you up.
Well, it's a bit embarrassing when you're rolling about the floor, whimpering. But my wife occasionally will just sort of come in. It was a few months ago she came in and I was lying on the floor next to the bike, and she just sort of shaking her head. First of all, checked my pulse to see I was still alive. And then she's like, yeah, okay, he's all right. And then it's like, what are you doing? There's no medals on offer. You're not doing it for your job. Nobody's standing over me. There's no coach saying do it. But there is something about the satisfaction of just, you're challenging yourself. And there's no one else to compare yourself to but yourself, yesterday. So if it can be, I think a lot of people say, where do you get the motivation to train hard or to keep going, or for anybody to train hard? I think it's about being better than you were yesterday. So I don't have to think about 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Actually, I want to be fitter than I was last week, or I want to just have a little challenge. But there's no pressure to do it every week, and then you can enjoy it. You don't enjoy the physical pain when you do it, but you enjoy the feeling afterwards of going, do you know what? That was a real challenge, and nobody was there to see it. You didn't have crowds cheering you on. You didn't get a little medal over your neck at the end of it. But why not set yourself a little goal each day just to push yourself?
See, I really struck like that individual motivation, but like I go on holiday with my family and all the family goes for a gym session, and there was, we had this trainer on holiday, and it was like how many rounds you can do in a certain time, and I have to beat my brother. Right. I have to beat him, and that's where I come, when it's against someone else, like how many burpees you can do it, I have to beat my family.
What are you worried about later on then?
You're telling me.
I've got my excuses in already because I'm tired from this morning.
Yeah. My legs are hurting. Yeah. But I feel like.
But that's so interesting though about like what you need around you to maximise your potential. So I guess, Chris, if I ask you the question first, what do others bring to you in terms of group exercise? So how does that support you? Secondly, what were you like to train with? And thirdly, like what helps you be the best that you possibly can?
I think in terms of a group activity, like nowadays, thinking about going out for a road ride, say, so I still ride my bike for fun. And, you could plan to go out for a ride, say on a Saturday morning, and you get up and you open the curtains and it's chucking it down with rain and it looks miserable, it's blowing a gale, and you think, I'll leave it till later on. It doesn't get any better, you end up missing it, or you do a shorter session, or you just skip it. But if you arrange to meet somebody at 8 a.m, say I'm going to meet you, at this point here, 8 o'clock, with a few others, you get up, you look at the window, you think, oh God, you just get dressed, you do it, you just get it done. And they're thinking the same. They're thinking, I don't really want to do it, but because you've committed as a group to doing it, you turn up. And so to me, I think there's a massive benefit from the social side, obviously, but the group motivation, you help each other. And even in an individual sport, and even in the old days when you're training at the velodrome, you feed off each other's energy. So there's days when you're not feeling so good, and there's others that are feeling high, and vice versa. And you help each other, and you watch each other, and you motivate each other. Even if you're not consciously doing it, just by watching your teammates absolutely gunning it on the track, really flying around, and think, right, I've got to try. Like you're talking about against your brother, having rivalries and help push yourself on.
Well.
Yeah,
it is. It's
yeah.
You're turning up with your friends really, because it is more than you trying to get on something and do it. You're thinking actually there's a bit of banter in between, you're both going through the same pain, it's a bit of a laugh. Exactly. And I think that is where I've been growing up, everything we did was always team sports. When I see like someone like Chris going around that, trying to motivate himself to ride, and I think that it's just got so much internal drive to be able to do that. I'm not saying I couldn't have done that, but I've just been brought up in, probably relying on other people to take you forward. And there's a different camaraderie, isn't it? You probably found that when you did the team events to the individual events.
It's funny, I've spoken to a few of my old teammates about this, in recent years after retiring, and there's a lot of envy of team sports, I think, like rugby, netball, hockey, just that unity that they have. And we were a team, but we were a team of individuals, and we all had our individual goals, and I've got some great friends, and we've got some great memories and moments together, but there's nothing quite like a pure team experience where you've helped each other, you've fought together, you've built this team, and together you've made it happen. And it's just, I think, as an individual sport athlete, looking at guys like yourselves in netball or any other team sports, there is definitely a level of envy of like, wow, that looks awesome. Like the Women's European Championships of football recently, looking at that, watching, I know a lot of rugby players, professional rugby players, and playing for Lions, and just what it means to them and the way they talk about it and how they play for each other. And it's, to me, that is something that I've always wanted to experience.
And it's so interesting though, because you've got two completely different approaches. Like Chris, clearly you can push yourself on your own into those positions. Tracey, but it's completely fine that maybe that isn't you, but you know what you need, so you just go and find that. And I think that's a really key message for everyone watching, is that you don't have to have that internal drive always. But if you don't have it,
we're all different. And there is not one size fits all approach for fitness or for life in general. But I think it's not putting too much pressure on yourself. It's finding something you love doing that you enjoy, and that makes it easier. You don't, just because I love cycling, it doesn't mean that every single session I jumped out of bed in the morning and thought, brilliant, I'm getting to ride my bike again today. Of course that's not the case.
You do, though, don't
no, do you know what? I don't know about you. When you after you retire, that feeling of waking up in the morning and not having that ache in your body, not thinking, here we go again, I've got to hurt myself again today. It's nice when you can choose to do it. It's like, actually, I don't want to do it today, or I do want to do it today. And it's so, you have to love what you do and enjoy the process. It can't just be about the end goal. I've had so many friends that were in the team who were incredibly successful and won medals at the highest level, and they were miserable. And I've got friends who didn't quite achieve their ultimate dream, but they enjoyed the process of what they did, and they were content in that approach. So you shouldn't fixate on the end goal. You have to. That is the kind of cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake. The reward should be getting to do what you love every day.
I remember one of our mantras within England was about reward the journey. Okay. So like the gold medal, we'd failed so many times, even to get past that semi-final stage. But through that 4 years, I said every single part, I want people to have enjoyed that part of the journey, and we rewarded that, and we celebrated success along the way. So actually, we didn't win the World Cup. We only won a bronze medal at the World Cup, and when we lost that semi-final, the day after, we still woke up like we wanted to win, and that is that's a huge for a team. We'd lost by one goal. Like, one goal in sport it's like 1 second. It's nothing, and you just think to yourself. But actually, we woke up really celebrating the journey. It was about the reward along the way as well. And I think some people forget that. I think there were times in my career, under different leaderships, I didn't enjoy the journey, which then didn't motivate. It motivates you, but you seem like you're just going along on an escalator. You don't feel like you want to take a jump or a leap. And you think, actually, they probably didn't work for me at that time.
I think that's a really interesting... Reward the journey is definitely one of those lines that we should remember from this. But what I think is interesting there as well is about, if you are happy, Chris, you kind of mentioned this earlier, if you're happy with what you've done in your preparation, there's nothing more you can do about the end result. And something relating to that and around like potential, and this is a question that we've had a lot from people beforehand, is around confidence and achieving your potential. Yeah. So in your experience, both of you, maybe Tracey from your playing days as well as coaching days, and Chris for you when you're approaching a race or a big event, how closely aligned is confidence in your feelings with your performance? And do you think that it's essential in achieving your potential? Because essentially there's going to be risks associated with maximising and achieving your potential. There's going to be courage, and you're going to have to do things that maybe are going to take you out of your comfort zone to get there. And that all seems to come back to your level of inner feeling and confidence. So if I start with you on that one, Chris.
I think you look at athletes in any sport, professional athletes on TV or in live events, before they're about to compete, they walk out and they always look like they're super confident, no fear. You just think, wow, imagine what. But I don't know any athlete that doesn't walk out and has behind the mask, behind that facade, they're terrified because they put so much into it. They want it so badly. They don't know if it's going to happen. All the kind of doubts are dancing around inside their head, and they're trying to bat them away and just focus on what they're about to achieve. So, even someone like Usain Bolt, who was invincible, when he was right at the top of his game, he was relaxed, walking out there, doing all his dancing around. But you see him in Rio, his final Olympics, when he wasn't at his best and he was had injury issues and he wasn't on peak form. That smile at the start was a little bit forced, and you can see just the when someone's nervous and they can't quite smile. Even that, you start going. Even Usain Bolt gets nervous before competition. So if he can get nervous, and the rest of us, imagine what we're like going out there, desperately trying to push away all the negative thoughts, the anxious thoughts, the doubts. So for me, it was about 10 minutes before. You want to be anywhere else but stepping onto that bike. It's like, Mark Pinson.
I was like, I wish I just worked in another job.
You actually dream of working in another job.
Why have I chosen to put myself in this position?
Why do I do this year in, year out?
And I thought it was only me that thought that. And then I read Matt Pinson's autobiography, and he said on the morning of their final in 2004 in Athens, they're on the sort of coach going from the village out to the rowing lake, and he was thinking, I just wish that the coach would break down or even would be involved in an accident, so if he had a crash and then have an excuse to not have to do this race. And I think it's really important to talk about that, because we all have these feelings before you go into a big interview or a meeting or a day at work that you've been dreading, or a big day, we're not dreading, but just it's a really important day, or you're doing a speech, you're standing up on stage and talking in front of a room full of people. Everybody has these moments of doubt, and it's so important to realise, well, how do you can't not have the doubt, and you can't not have the nerves, because you need the nerves to get the best out of yourself. How do you deal with it? Okay. Well, you have to. For me, the confidence that or how I got on top of the fear, on top of the nerves, was by reminding myself that you've done the work, you've done the preparation. You can't be any better than you are. This is the best you can be. Will that mean that you're going to win the gold medal? Who knows? Yeah. There is no guarantee that you're going to win the gold medal, but you've done everything you possibly can. And so try and enjoy the experience. And almost at the moment you get onto the track, for me, that's when the nerves would start to sort of dissipate. And you go, right, I'm here, this is actually pretty cool. There's lots of people here, this is exciting, this is the reward for all the hard work. And it's the bit before then, before you can actually do what you're here to do, that's when the nerves, I'm sure when you guys are sitting
before
around,
you open the door, I even said it to my brother-in-law when he started out exercise. I was like, do you know what? Opening that door is the biggest step for anyone. Stepping over that threshold is the biggest step. As soon as you get in there, you realise actually it's not so bad. But actually, I was exactly like that. There was a preparation, and I probably remember it more now as a head coach. I remember the bit I used to love was when I was just sat on that bench and they were warming up. Because I knew then that I couldn't do any more then. I just had the half times, the quarter times, and that was fine. But then warming up then, I was like, I can relax now, everything's done, everything's gone smoothly. But I used to sit, I remember going, and I used to use the anecdote, I wish I just worked in Tesco's. And I actually used that in the gold medal team talk. I was like, girls, it's just like you work in Tesco's, you get the ball, you get the centre pass, you just click it and throw it in your bag. And I used that as my antidote, because I thought actually that's the way that calms me down. I'm thinking, not that I'm mocking, that is definitely not, but it actually calmed me down by thinking that process, you do think you'd work somewhere else. I don't know where you thought you were working. Where did you work?
I've never had a proper job in my life.
You didn't know where to work.
My last job was 1995, working in a bookshop. I had a bike shop job part-time when I was a student, and I worked in a bookshop.
It's Kindle now.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so what would you do now?
I've got no skills. I am skillless.
It's so good though for people to hear you say that, because I think we did an interview recently with a sports psychologist who actually works at Manchester City. Probably shouldn't say that, Andrew, actually. Sorry, Tracey. And he was saying confidence isn't about a feeling. It's not about, if you wait for confidence to come, you'll never do anything. It's about knowing that you've got the tools and the preparation to do whatever you set out to achieve. And that's kind of what you both said. So based off of that, though, Tracey, if I come to you from a team environment, because, Chris, you've shared a couple of things there about what you would do to just, not necessarily feel confident, but to just deal with it and go out and perform as you need to. When you're working with a team, how do you instill confidence in others? Are you honest with them about what Chris is saying, or do you actually kind of blag it and act like you're confident, and that kind of goes across to them as well?
I think the process I like to go through, I've got to feel confident myself before I can actually put that onto someone else. And I think the way I do that is I surround myself by the right people. So I always like someone who is willing to speak to me, challenge my brain, so on and so on. I like key players who are able to do that, so that forms up my team. And then I like a little bit of fire within the team that's a little bit unpredictable, you know, that you never know what you're going to get, but brings a little bit of personality to that. I think one of the things that when someone come into my environment to actually, you know, oversee my environment and have a look, they just basically said that a lot of my confidence comes from my personality. So I'm quite a bubbly, I like to smile, I like to laugh, and so on and so on. And it was how I could still retain that when I still felt nerves. So I worked a lot on myself in fact that I didn't lose that part of my personality, because I think when you're a leader or you're at the top of your game, life can become too serious, and one of my things now is I've got to relax a lot more. You can become too serious, which means then it portrays off. So, you know, you don't have that bubbly, you don't have that personality, and that's what people know you for. So your complete personality changes when you go into pressurised environments, which then can put pressure on the team or on the people around you. So I've worked a lot on still trying to bring out my personality, but a lot of that is driven from the confidence of the people around me. So I can't have a lot of people that are like me, because they can't take you to the extreme. So you need some people who are quite calming, who are quite quiet, and so on and so on. So it was about the team around me fitting the personalities to be able to excel and bring that confidence to me. Yeah, and to be fair, and it was also about laughing at myself as well. And that's really hard as a leader to do, because you never want to, you think you're perfect, don't you, when you're like a leader and stuff, and you're like, well, actually, I laugh at myself. I used to laugh at myself, but now I can laugh at myself in front of a team and feel that they still have the respect for me.
It's interesting what you're saying though about the smiling and just the positivity, because Steve Peters, who was our team psychologist, he used to talk about it all the time, you know, the importance of smiling. So when you walk into the track centre, you might be absolutely terrified, he said, but put on a big smile. And he said, you know, physiologically, the effect of smiling within your, you know, the hormonal effect, the endorphin release, it can change your mindset just by smiling. And he said, and even if it doesn't change how you feel at all, he said your rivals are going to see you walking on the track centre with this big smile on your face, and they're thinking, well, why is he so happy? What's he looking so confident about?
Do you have someone in your team, Chris? I have
someone in my team that sees that worry and all that, and then they just say one little thing to you that actually gives you that, that just gives you that little bit of a laugh or that little bit of a joke. So that's the people that I need to be. So if you see me sat on a bench, you know, there's one person, and I'll just laugh then, like crack up laughing, and then that'll just bring so much.
It diffuses the tension, and you also remember, do you know what, it's perspective. It's like, we're not saving lives, it's not life and death. We're riding bikes
it feels
in anti-clockwise circles,
and
it can feel like life and death, and this is the epicenter of everything. And then you suddenly go, wait a minute, Steve used to talk about the helicopter technique of imagining yourself in a helicopter in this stressful situation, just going up and up and up, and looking down on it, and as the further up you go, the smaller your little situation becomes, and the more you can see around you, the more you go, hang on, there's a whole world out here, people with their own little troubles and stresses and lives going on. You're actually pretty irrelevant here, and the world will not stop if you don't win a bike race. And you kind of go, oh, and it's not diminishing, you know, the importance of what you do. Of course, what you do, you've got to care about it, you've got to commit to it, and it's important that you give everything. But it is ultimately racing bikes.
Do you feel that you're like that now as a dad?
Oh, being a parent, I think it changes mass. And I wish, in a way, I had the same perspective now. Because as long as your kids are happy and healthy, then everything else is okay. And
Chris, I've heard you speak so much about perspective and how that helped you in kind of those high pressure situations. And again, thinking about maximising potential, obviously when you're pushing yourself to a limit, there is a chance that what you're trying to achieve, you're not going to be able to. So failure is a very real thing, and that's something that again can knock your confidence and things like that. So Tracey, if I come to you with this one, not that you're a specialist in failure in any way at all, that wasn't planned, but how did you support others when maybe they'd tried something and it hadn't quite paid off? Like, is there a way to fail?
Well, I always remember back to my dad. It was always like failure's good feedback. Okay. So he didn't see it as a negative, he saw it as quite a positive. And I remember being 12-year-old and I'd gone to my first netball club, and it was like a performance club, and they didn't have any junior netball then. Everyone was like under 21s. That was the team I was aiming to actually play in. And I remember playing that day, and I didn't get selected basically for the under-21s. I think I got reserve or something like that. And you know, your mum gives you you're only 12, you've got plenty of years ahead of you. And I think them sort of scenarios make things worse for you, because you actually don't see an out of that. Well, what does that mean, that I've got to wait another 9 years before I'm going to be selected? So I remember my dad was just really realistic. He was dead honest, and I think that's something that I've tried to bring into me as a coach. And I just remember walking in the house and he said, well, you know, why do you think you didn't get selected? I was like, well, first of all, I went, because I'm only 12. And he was like, no, that's not why you didn't get selected. If you were good enough, you know, you would have got selected. And I said, well, to be honest, I didn't shoot that well. The player I was playing with didn't really know where she was going, so on. And I started to, and he went, well, what can you do about it? And he sort of drove me to think about failure in a different way. You know, and there is a limit about what you can do, but it was like, my dad was always about, you know, you get one opportunity, you give it a shot and put yourself in the best possible scenario. So, you know, if that girl plays for that team, go and join that team. You know, get better to play with her if she's the player that you need to be playing better with. If that player wants you to feed there, go and practice it. You know, if your shooting were off, go out every day and shoot goals. And he was just a real perspective sort of man. And he never put the white elephant in the room. He took that completely out of the room, and we said what he thinks. And I think that is where I was, because when I was playing, I remember going through a really bad patch where I wasn't shooting that well because I was a goal attack. But we all sat in a changing room about why we lost, and everybody said everything else apart from the fact that the England shooters had only shot something like 40-50%. And for me, that put me more on edge, and that didn't drive my confidence a lot. So now it's a case of there's about an honesty, but there's a way about understanding that person, delivering that honesty in a way that they can receive it and do something about it. And I think that's something that I've really learned as a person and as a coach.
You're absolutely right, though, about, you know, failure being where all the lessons are.
Yeah.
If you win all the time, it's great if you get a winning streak. But I think, from my experience, when things were going well,
you started winning all the time.
Well, but you see, but that's what people assume, because when you see the Olympic Games, if you don't watch cycling all the time, you might just turn it on for the Olympics. And it went well at the Olympics. I was very lucky that my Olympic experiences before Games went really well. But in between times, there were loads of defeats, there were loads of losses, there were loads of injuries, loads of setbacks. And I found that when I became world champion the first time in 2002, I thought I cracked it. This is the winning formula. This is the recipe for success. So all I've got to do is repeat this exactly, and next year I'll get the same result. And I did that. And the next year I came fourth. But I would produce the same performance by doing the same thing, but everybody else had raised their game.
Yeah.
So you become fearful of change if you're winning, and you think, well, I don't want to change anything. Whereas when you lose, you have that opportunity to go, well, actually, this wasn't perfect, that could be better, this could be improved, and you change and you adapt.
You do.
So it's hard when you're winning to still be able to step back and go, well, we won, but it wasn't perfect. And therefore, I think failure has to be seen as an opportunity to get better and to learn, and to, as long as you don't beat yourself up and go, well, you know, I'm rubbish, I'm just not good at this, I can't do it anymore. It is very much your own mindset of, right, how can we get better next time?
Yeah.
And what positives can we take from this? We're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, not everything is bad. We're not going to chuck it all away. Keep this and change this.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I've made a mistake when we won the Commonwealth Games. I think in 2018, we plan a 4-year cycle, so we'd won the gold medal earlier, probably a year earlier than we expected, if you look at your path that you were going on. And I remember coming back and thinking, I should have changed something then. I personally, because other things come into account, that, you know, the sport had escalated, there were different things that were coming in, and I thought, our vision cannot be the same. We've broke that glass ceiling. Right. And that was one of our, mission statements. We want to break that glass ceiling. We'd broke it. Yeah. So what was it about retaining it like the Australians? You know, they now expect to get in every final. They've been in every final since the competition has started. And like Chris said, you know, and it's funny when you do win, you know, you actually do think about the losses, because I remember when we did win that gold medal, and I think, oh my God, about 2 years ago, I remember going to a press conference and we'd just been beaten by New Zealand by 37 goals, and I thought, where's the out from this? Because it makes you appreciate them losses, thinking, well, actually, them losses really guide your winning formula.
And the lows also, really make you appreciate the highs.
Yeah.
Because if you win all the time, you get used to that sort of, it's almost flatlining. And it's the joy from winning comes from knowing how much doubt, how much, how many setbacks you've had, those moments of thinking, is this ever going to happen?
Yeah.
And then when it finally comes to fruition, that's what makes it so special, when you've had those moments of real.
And I think the only people that appreciate that is probably your family, aren't they?
Yeah.
Your close family members and your coaches. They've seen everything. They've seen them injuries when you were low and you didn't think you were going to make it. They've seen the losses when, you've not been able to speak to anyone for about 3-4 days, and they've seen all that. But it's really funny because people, when they see the shop window, like your fans and that, all they see is that you're a winner. Yeah. And you think, actually, all that is forgotten, but actually that is the process that actually brought me the biggest learning and confidence coming into this competition.
Yeah, I think one of my favourite sayings is that you can lose, but don't be defeated. So it means, of course, you're going to have setbacks, but as long as you come back from those, that's only going to be, you'll do something about that. And I think when you're talking about the situations that you're talking about those moments that define winning and losing. Tracey, we have to ask you, Commonwealth Games 2018, and Chris, I know you've got so many moments as well, so I'd love some from you. That was probably one of the most dramatic finals we'll ever see. Yeah. And I remember watching it.
I've only ever won a final by 1 goal. The finals.
It's just
I don't know.
It's just what you do.
I said one day we'll win by 20 goals.
But in that moment where you're giving your team instructions and you're on the sideline and they're looking for you for guidance, what did you say to them? And how do you allow them to perform at their best in those moments? Because inside, like we were saying earlier, are you thinking, I'm losing it, this is so nerve-wracking, or are you quite steady?
Yeah, I remember, we sat, before we went into competition, we were going to a holding camp, which netball always maximised because we never get anyone paying for anything for us. So actually, we our preparation is, we go into this holding camp, and it was in Sydney at the time. And I remember sitting down with a couple of our key players and saying, there'll be some point in this competition, I'm going to play you in that position. I don't know when it'll be, but it'll be our X factor and stuff like that. So the preparation going into that, the girls knew exactly how we were going to play and stuff like that. But the hardest one for us wasn't that final. And I know everyone looks at that final and say it was amazing, it was historic for England netball. The biggest game for us was getting past that semi-final, because we were a team that had always been in that semi-final position. We'd never got past that point. We'd either won a medal or we'd lost a medal, and that was the situation we're in. And we'd played Jamaica the day before, and we'd won by 1 goal again. And I remember coming back to the village and one of our captains said, we've got nothing to lose tomorrow. And I said, well, yeah, we've got everything to lose. We've got the gold medal to lose. And then they looked in the changing room and we said, well, what we're going to do now? And the instinct for a coach is, right, we're going to focus in straight on the Aussies who were playing at the time. And I remember going back and I said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to watch the historic game that we've just broke. So we actually, and that's something that you can forget, that you actually forget to enjoy the moments that while you're in it. That was a really good performance. We were 8 down at half time, and we come back to win that game by 1. But there were key moments in that game that we needed to utilise to go into our final tomorrow. And it was important that the girls were able to watch it, enjoy it, before they actually moved on. So when we actually went to the game the day after, it felt like just a different feeling around the camp, and our process was the same leading into the game. And when we were in the game, I just remember it was this key moment, and I just basically said, this is the time you're going to, and I moved that round. I said, this is the time. So it wasn't something that she wasn't expecting, and it was something that she knew was coming, but she didn't know when it was going to come. And we moved our goal shooter out, Helen House back to goal shooter. We put our youngster onto wing attack, and it just basically, we were 4 down, and we basically just completely took the team. But that didn't come just from that particular game. And sometimes you can get a bit blindsided when you're in, you think about the work you've done before, and it's about remembering them. As a coach, it's about remembering them key moments, because players just get lost in the moment, and it's just about keep drawing back into that. And I think that was what was key in that particular final. And not
fixating on your rivals as well, because you can build them up to be, gods, and that they're invincible. And of course you want to watch, you try and, analyse your opponent and work out how you can beat them and what they like to do. But if all you do is sit and watch them all the time, you forget. Like you're saying, instead of watching them, let's look at our video. Let's look at how good we were and look at our strengths and look how good we can be. And we could change this and improve this. But actually, you know, if we're at our best, it doesn't matter what they're going to do. We can beat them.
Did you rely on your coach doing a lot of the opposition analysis for you, or did you work with him on it?
I did. So we would have a performance analyst team that would video all the racing, and then you'd have your, the iPad. In those days, it was quite exciting technology to be able to, they'd be up in the stands and they just send it straight down after the race. You could watch your race, watch your rivals. As soon as you won your race into the next round, who have we got, this guy, what does he like to do? Look at the data, look at the stats. But ultimately, it's down to your coach, who had, my coach was Jan van Eyden, German sprinter.
Was he quite clear?
He was so good. We could simplify it and say, right, let's not overcomplicate this. You ride for the front and you ride for the back. This is your plan A, this is your plan B, and if it all goes, pear-shaped, then this is your plan Z kind of thing. And the more you can simplify things and not confuse, and if you're the one that's in the sort of proactive position, you're the one that's making the move, you're the one that's initiating the tactics, and then your opponent is reacting to you. That's really what you want to be doing. And if you spend your time fixating on what they're doing, you're almost waiting for them to make the move.
And I've had probably the most coaches throughout England netball, and every single one of them wanted us to play like New Zealand or wanted us to play like Australia, and I think that was something I wanted to take out of England netball, because I wanted us to play like us. We had world-class players in there and they were very, very good. And I remember we used to go into team meetings and even at junior level showing to pathway and that, and we used to show, this is what we want our shooters to do. And it used to be an Australian clip. And it used to be like, well, obviously we're not Australian, we don't play like them, we have a different identity. So I think one of the key things was we have our own identity. We play in a way that we play. We, buy into that way we play, and so on and so on. And that
translates into the world that we all live in now in terms of comparison. Being the thief of joy is something I know that people say a lot, and social media has always been a big one for that for people, in that you look at others' best highlights and actually it's not the reality of what goes on. Tracey, hearing that story, you sound like a genius as a coach. Like, to get that right in that moment is unbelievable.
Now I'm retired coach.
Unbelievable. But I think obviously...
Yeah, exactly,
I'll
genius.
reference that for you if you want. You can have that. But I think obviously it goes down to the preparation that you put in. But what I love about that story is, like, at that moment you got it right, but that was a risk and it took courage. Right? And Chris, in your sport particularly, I'm sure there's a moment where you thought, I'm just going to go for this, and it paid off. Is there anything in your mind that you think, because I know some of your races, like if you're behind or if you're going to go out hard and hold on, like, is there ever a time when you thought, I really went for it then and it paid off, but it was a risk?
During the races, you mean, or in general, in life in general? I remember being at university in St Andrews and I was doing physics and maths, and I went from school doing my cycling to a reasonable level, sort of national level, but there was no clear pathway, there was no opportunity like there is now with British Cycling and funding, and everything was laid out. There were 2 full-time members of staff at British Cycling, there was no lottery funding, there was no indoor track in the UK, so the velodrome shut in September and opened in April. So there wasn't a clear opportunity for a career. So the sensible option was get a good degree, get a sensible job, there's your path for the rest of your life, working in a job that you might not actually enjoy that much, you never know. But I was about a year into this degree, having a brilliant time socially, hadn't touched my bike at all, hated the course, realised that and I got a letter through the post from British Cycling saying, we've got this new velodrome in Manchester, we're going to do 2 training camps, or 2 training weekends a month, and we'd like you to come down, we can pay 10 pence a mile, and there's a room at the youth hostel, and that'll be all we can offer you basically, but do you want to give it a go? And I remember thinking, if I stay here in St Andrews, it won't happen, because there's the pub, there's your mates, there's a social scene, my bike's chained up outside, I haven't touched it for 3 months. If I move back to Edinburgh, if I change courses, I went to do sports science, because I had all these questions about training I didn't know the answers to, so I thought, well, I could actually do a degree in this, and I could be my own coach, I can answer all these questions myself, be closer to the velodrome in Edinburgh, have my old teammates from the City of Edinburgh Racing Club, borrow my parents' car to drive down to Manchester every second weekend, pass my driving test, because I hadn't at that point, And that was and people thought I was absolutely crazy. It's like, you're giving up a degree in physics and maths, and this is a proper degree, to go and do sports science. I mean, what is sports science?
I did a maths degree and then went and did sports science.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did people think you were, like, what is, were they like, what is sports science? I mean, how old are you? You're a bit younger than me, aren't you?
I did mine later though, my sports science.
So by then it was a bit more established.
Yeah.
So mine, when I did it was the second year. Like Loughborough did it for the first time, and the next year Murray House in Edinburgh did it, and it was brand new. And people were like, well, what is sports science?
You did the easy version.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. And but it was. I loved it because I was going into the university library and getting papers and journals on physiology, on biomechanics, on psychology, all sorts of stuff.
And sociology.
And I was doing that before when I was still doing my other degree. So I was doing this for myself, and I suddenly thought, wait a minute, I hate this other course. I'm really interested and passionate about this. Why don't I do a degree in this? Yeah. And it was easy because I enjoyed it. Sure. And that was the point where that was a real risk of, do you focus and commit on something that you have a passion for, or do you stick to the conventional route where everyone would say that's the sensible thing? My flatmates in St Andrews thought I was, I thought I'd gone mad for choosing to, what are you doing? And I was like, I really want to do this. Yeah, I proved them wrong.
I think your parents must have supported.
Well, I think they were saying, well, they were clearly concerned, and like, because as a parent, you want the best for your child. You think, well, A, what's sports science, and B, you're never going to make a living out of cycling. This is not a career.
Exactly, yeah.
This is not a career. So I think they said, well, okay, if you're going to do a degree, at least you'll have a degree which you can apply to something, and that could be your backup plan. And then the plan was to finish my degree, which was in '99, maybe have a year or 2 years, almost like a sort of gap year type thing, pursuing the cycling dream, and then get a proper job.
Anything is possible. And what I really like about what you both said there is I also studied sports science, so clearly...
Did you? Good man.
We've all got stuff in common.
There's always something in common. This is that.
Isn't it interesting how many people in that, I don't know about your year, but your class, but I think only maybe 2 or 3 people actively went on to be sports scientists with that degree, but went on to do really interesting careers and different things.
The point that you made though that really resonates with me is finding your passion for your purpose, and if you find that, you can make anything from it. Like, it probably wasn't a big thing when you started, but now people will aspire to be future cyclists and netballers and coaches and all these sorts of things. I could honestly chat to you both all day long. I'll try to, but maybe not whilst it's filmed. But we always end these kind of conversations with one question. And I did warn you that there's maybe quite a big question that's quite rogue that I'll chuck in there, and this is the one. So obviously at the core of what Vitality do, it's about encouraging positive behaviour change. And I know that being partnered with Pure Gym, we want to encourage that as well in terms of getting people to get into the habits and the routines, and really, like we've discussed today, kind of stretch what you think is possible. So the final question that I ask people is there one thing that you can identify, one change that you've made in your life that you feel has had the biggest impact on you? So that could be from the biggest kind of like physical, mental, social change to the smallest daily habit. It's something that you think, actually, that's made a real difference to me.
I've got to learn to relax more. Okay. We're quite an intense family. Okay. Even when we go on holiday, you can see it. Gary sends an itinerary through of our day. Yeah, it's very hard. And I work like that. I was sat there last night going, what's the itinerary for the weekend? And now they've thrown a day off in. I'm like, oh, geez, But I really find it hard. How are you doing it? So I do different things. I'm really not a telly watcher, but I try and sit down and get into a box set with my family, go out with my friends and family, spending time with them, taking maybe Nev to the park, doing stuff like that, doing kid things or taking him swimming. But yeah, I tend to, everything in my life used to be so intense. And it's just about taking that step back, and it's hard to relax.
Well, it is, but you've got to, with kids as well. Finding time.
About 8:30 when
just open a bottle of wine, that's it.
I was going to say, maybe have a few more. Because you didn't really drink, drinking once a week was unique, So now when I drink once a week, sometimes I worry about myself, if I have a glass of wine, I'm like, whoa. It just wasn't earned.
Once a week.
I know.
I've got one night off a week. But
electrolytes, you need to tell your electrolyte story.
I'll get it afterwards, yeah. But yeah, I think, like, well, you mentioned comparison being the thief of joy. It's one of my favourite quotes. I think it was Theodore Roosevelt said it. And that's one of the things that I really, it took a long time to get my head around. When things weren't going well, like when I was, competing, and if I wasn't going well, and if my form was dropping off, I would then spend my time looking at my rivals, looking at my teammates, because a lot of your teammates were potentially your rivals at Olympic level, and fixating on what they were doing and looking at, there's like a little training book. So in the track centre, you do your effort, the coach writes the time down in the notepad, and you come down and you check your time. But I was checking my time and then looking over and seeing what Jason was doing and what, Craig was doing and Matt was doing, and it's insecurity, and it always, worrying about other people and comparing yourself to other people is a fruitless task. Whether it's social media, whether it's anything in life in general, you don't know where they are on their journey. They could be at a peak, they could be at a trough, they could be, all sorts of things going on in their life you don't know about. But so why compare yourself to them? If you can compare yourself to yourself yesterday, be better than you were yesterday. That's the only person you've got to beat. And it doesn't have to be in everything. You don't have to come and smash out the park every single day. A little micro victory along the way every day, just trying to be better than your own personal best. You don't have to talk about it, you don't have to tell people about it, you don't have to post it on social media. You don't have to, here's me in the gym doing this, here's me doing this. People that, you don't have to tell everyone about it. You can just be for yourself and go, actually, I'm really proud that I managed to get out of bed half an hour earlier. Or I managed to, exactly, yeah, the little things like, or I'm going to go to the gym today. I'm actually going to go. I don't feel like it. Or I'm going to go out on my bike. Or I'm going to get this bit of work done for work that's been bothering me. Or I've got to get this thing done. And you seized the day and you made the most of it. And it's just you're better than you were yesterday. And just keep doing that. And if you do that on a daily basis, ongoing, then you become a better person.
How did you manage having your life controlled to you controlling it? Did you find that a struggle when you first retired? Because I found that really hard. And even now I still bring parts of that into my life. Like where people just controlled your life, where you go on tour and that was the itinerary and that's what... So then you come home and you're like, what do I eat tonight? Because...
Well, I quite enjoyed routine. I liked the routine. Yeah. Because when you had that routine, that was your foundation and you could build everything around it and fit your... And then, I don't know about, it's like, a life without... I don't have normal weeks now. So my work and my sort of working life is so varied and it's brilliant because you've got lots of variety. Yeah. But there's the only constant in my life, apart from the kids and their school and their sort of routine, is exercise. And it's trying to get, even if it's half an hour a day, and you think, well, what can you do in half an hour a day? But you can do like this morning, this session I did where like a really hard interval session on the bike, and it's exhausting, but you feel, well, if I hadn't done that, then it would have been 2 days since the last session, and then if I didn't do it tomorrow, it's 3 days, and it's a week, and then it becomes difficult to get back into it. So consistency.
It's so important though that we work with lots of sports people and athletes, and actually everything that you said today is learnt from sport in your careers, but it translates into everyone's life. And the theme is maximising potential, and you two honestly have been so inspiring. So I feel like enthused after speaking to you. And I think the thing is that actually what we're trying to do with this is be authentic and get people to be open and honest. And you both shared things that I've never heard and I don't think anyone would appreciate. So it's amazing to hear that. Thank you so much for your time, and hope everyone that has watched this has learned as much as I have, has enjoyed it, and your energy is honestly... I'm going away, I'm going to do a bike ride tonight, we'll be on the floor.
We're going to gym after this, but I don't think I'll end up on a crash mat.
You may get pushed over.
Exactly.